Typical of Chicago, where 25 years of classroom experience is average. They too started out eager and in follow statistics, half of them will never finish high school.
Talk about length and the width.
Irving's teachers are also typical of Chicago, where 25 years of classroom experience is average. They too started out eager and enthusiastic, just like Pat Mark, who began teaching at Irving 30 years ago.
I knew I was going to change the world. There wasn't going to be a better teacher than Pat Mark. And I really had that feeling for a long, long time until you get into the system and you get into that, what shall I call it, quagmire. It was just this feeling of almost despair, you know. You just go on and you think you're doing a great job, and then up come the reading scores and up come the math scores, and you know, what did you do all year? You know. And it was that year after year, and you just sort of give up.
They were up there giving their guts, their all, and they weren't getting the response they wanted from their children. Good morning, gentlemen. How you doing?
Madeline Moraldi became principal of Irving School when it was relocating to the new building in 1988. But her plans went far beyond moving a staff from one facility to another. She wanted them to move to a whole new philosophy of education.
Good. It's not only a change of technique or method, it's a change of attitude. You have to change your attitude about how children learn, to change your attitude about whether children can learn. Tornadoes today, huh? What room are you in? My attitude is that every single one of these children who walk through these doors can be the very, very best. That all the potential is there.
But Irving students hadn't been the best. For years, they had been reluctant learners, with test scores in the lowest 25% of the nation. Madeline presented that history to her faculty, along with a disturbing challenge. Maybe the students weren't learning because of the way they were being taught.
This was difficult for them to accept the fact that I was looking at them and not at the community and drugs and poverty and everything else. I was not looking at the parents. I was not looking at the children. I was looking at the teachers. And it angered many of the teachers. It really did.
In fact, Madeline faced tremendous resistance. Some Irving teachers felt so insulted they left the school. Among those who stayed, the reactions were mixed.
It makes you doubt that what you've ever done has been of any value, for one thing.
It was a new spark of hope. We had gone through other principals and other Board of Education mandates, and it just wasn't working.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting to order.
But the new reform law had transferred power from a central bureaucracy to the local school councils. For the first time in Chicago history, parents, community members, teachers, and the principal of individual schools could determine for themselves the curriculum and how it should be taught. The starting point for Irving was to find out from the teachers in which subject students performed the worst.
It was unanimous. It was writing. They don't know how to write. They don't like to write. We don't do a lot of writing. I said, okay, let's start with writing.
All right, guys, today we're going to try to be like Walt Whitman. How many have heard of Walt Whitman?
The new building had come equipped with a room full of computers, and it was Madeline's idea to use them for a writing lab.
Let me read this little piece from Song of Myself, where he talks mostly about the sounds that he has heard in his life. I hear bravuras of birds, bustle of growing wheat.
Eager for a change, Pat Mark told Madeline that she wanted to teach the new course.
I jumped on her bandwagon. I mean, not because for any other reason except that she excited me, and I wanted to feel good about myself. And I hadn't been feeling good about being a teacher. I want you to be Walt Whitman today and think about sounds.
The first year, every class in the school was to come to the lab twice a week to work with Pat on writing. But there was a twist. Not only were students required to learn how to use the computers, so were their teachers.
I would put my toe in the doorway, say, I'm not coming in there. I don't want any part of that. Well, I've been dragged kicking and screaming into the 20th century.
By year 2, a second writing lab was set up in the school library. Even teachers with reservations about the new program had learned to handle the technology on their own. But computers alone weren't going to turn students into writers. The teachers themselves had to change.
Me, I'm going to write about asparagus, but you write about whatever you want. What do you get?
Madeline called on Harvey Daniels of the Illinois Writing Project to bring its writing workshop to Irving.
The Illinois Writing Project was started in 1977 as a way of helping teachers to teach kids to write better. Most public school teachers, oddly enough, really don't get much training in the teaching of writing.
This workshop was the third one held at Irving within 2 years. By now, most of the faculty had already attended. But it was the first time for 5th grade teacher Rita Rice, who has taught for 29 years in Chicago schools.
Well, I was rather coerced into it. Nagged, if you will. And so I really felt I had to do it. So I did. I was embarrassed not to by that time.
By coming here, Rita and other veteran teachers are learning what their education failed to give them. Ideas for getting kids to write, like keeping a daily journal.
They were worrying me to death. Mrs. Banks, can I write in my journal? I have something to write about. Some, like kids, are afraid to raise their hand if they don't understand a lesson. They would put that in there, so they gave you so much information. And I had just stopped grading papers, and all I wanted to do was read the journals. I was an RJS, a reluctant journal starter, but I guess I have to just take the plunge. And I think I'll start next week. You've convinced me.
I want you to start journaling.
Okay, what you're going to write in your journals is how these two characters...
Okay, boys and girls, it's time to get your journals out. It's journaling time.
At Irving, every day in every grade, children write about anything at all in their own journals, and it won't be corrected. That's because Irving's faculty is learning to stop using one of English teaching's most common but fruitless practices, the red marking of all errors in students' writing.
We've known for a long time that that does nothing to improve the quality of kids' writing in the future. In fact, it's no more effective than marking no errors at all. And, of course, it has a religious dimension. People think it's the right thing to do, and parents expect it, and it's traditional and so forth. It just doesn't happen to work.
Many, many times I've had the child correct it, make the same mistakes over again on the corrected paper, and frequently add a few more.
The question is how to teach it effectively. You and I, more professional people, probably learned those rules pretty well in school. Lots of kids didn't. It was not an efficient way to teach.
And if you want me to help, raise your hand and I'll come over.
Steve Zimmelman is the other co-founder of the Illinois Writing Project. He's helping Rita try out some of the new techniques she picked up at the workshop.
What I'm trying to work on is the method of correcting kids' papers. Having them get more involved in taking the responsibility for making their own corrections. Do you see it, Steve?
It's supposed to be has.
That sounds better. Okay, Samantha, come on.
They did interviews, and Samantha came up with a 6-page interview. Samantha had never written more than a couple of words or sentences in her life. And we couldn't even get her to cut it down. She is so proud of this. And if the kids are proud, then they're going to be willing to put more energy into correcting the spelling and the punctuation.